She's with him. The Billionaire's gala went silent. When the working class, Dad leaned in and said one word. The Grand Harlow ballroom had never looked more impressive. Crystal chandeliers hung from 18-foot ceilings, dripping light like frozen waterfalls. White floral centerpieces anchored every table. Men in tuxedos laughed too loudly. Women in designer gowns picked at their salads with gold-plated forks. Everything in this room, the wine, the conversation, even the silence between words, was carefully performed. This was the Caldwell Foundation's annual benefit gala. It raised millions for children's education every year and somehow, in the process, managed to make everyone attending feel slightly worse about themselves. At the most visible table in the room sat Vanessa Caldwell. She was 31, stunning in an emerald satin dress, dark hair falling in soft waves over her bare shoulders. Diamond earrings caught the chandelier light every time she moved. She was beautiful the way certain paintings are beautiful, technically flawless and somehow completely untouchable. She had been sitting at this table for 47 minutes. She knew because she'd been checking her watch. To her left sat Derek Voss, 53, silver-haired, and built entirely from inherited confidence. His family had been in banking for 4 generations. He had never needed to work hard at anything, and it showed in the way he moved through the world. Slowly, comfortably, utterly certain that every room had been waiting for him. He and Vanessa's father had done business together for 15 years. That relationship was the only reason Derek was seated at the primary table tonight. It was also why Vanessa was expected to be pleasant to him. The comments started small. A remark about how she had finally returned to these events after her last relationship ended. A sympathetic observation about how a woman like her must find all that independence lonely. A joke about her father's fortune, not surviving another decade of philanthropic generosity. Each comment was a small stone. The table laughed politely after everyone. Nobody said a word in her defense. Vanessa kept her expression pleasant. She had been trained since she was 12 years old to do exactly that. Don't react. Don't make a scene. Smile, nod, and survive the evening. She was very good at it. She was also, underneath the composure, completely exhausted by it. Marcus Webb almost didn't come. He had stood in front of his bathroom mirror for 10 full minutes that evening, wearing his nicest shirt, a dark burgundy button-down, trying to talk himself out of it. He had a daughter to get home to. He had work at 5:30 the next morning. He had absolutely no business walking into a room full of people who spent more on one dinner than he made in a month. But his project manager, Frank, had pressed the invitation into his hand that morning like it was sacred. These people funded our Midtown project. Marcus, go. Eat something that didn't come from a food truck. Show some face. So at 7:15, after kissing his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, on the forehead and promising he'd be back before she woke up, he drove 40 minutes across the city in his pickup truck and walked into the most expensive room he'd ever stood in. He felt it immediately, that sensation of being exactly the wrong shape for a space. His shirt was clean but not tailored. His shoes were polished but not Italian. His hands were calloused from 12-hour shifts on the construction site. There was a thin scar above his left eyebrow from a scaffolding accident 3 years ago. No amount of chandelier light was going to change any of it. He found a seat near the back, accepted a glass of water, and told himself he'd stay exactly 1 hour. That was the plan. Then he looked across the room and saw her. He noticed her not because of the dress or the diamonds. He noticed her because of her eyes. In a room where every face was performing ease, performing power, performing belonging, her eyes were doing something different. They were enduring. There was a stillness in them that wasn't peace. It was the stillness of a person who had made themselves very small and very quiet and was waiting, with great discipline, for something to be over. Marcus knew that look. He had worn it himself, in the months after his wife left, on the nights when Lily cried herself to sleep asking questions he didn't have answers for, and he sat outside her bedroom door on the hallway floor because he couldn't face the empty living room. He had worn that look at grocery stores and parent-teacher conferences and job sites, the expression of a person holding everything together through pure will asking nothing from nobody. He watched the silver-haired man beside her say something. He couldn't hear it, but he saw her jaw tighten, barely, almost invisibly, the way someone's does when they've swallowed something bitter and are pretending it tasted fine. He saw the table laugh. He saw her fingers tighten slightly on the tablecloth. He set down his water glass. He stood up. He wasn't entirely sure why. He would think about it later, driving home, lying awake at midnight, and he still wouldn't be able to explain it cleanly. Maybe it was the look in her eyes. Maybe it was Lily, and the tenderness that raising a daughter alone had carved into him. Maybe it was simply that he had watched people be quietly cruel to each other for many years and said nothing. And tonight he was done with that. He crossed the ballroom slowly. A few heads turned. He didn't notice or didn't care. When he reached her table, he placed one hand lightly on the back of her chair and leaned down. His voice was low and unhurried. "Sorry I'm late." The table went silent. Vanessa turned. Her eyes met his, wide, searching. Startled the way someone is when they hear an unexpected sound in a quiet house. Her lips parted slightly. She had no idea who he was. He looked at her steadily. In that half-second, he communicated something without words. Not a command, not a plea, just a quiet offering. "I'm here. Use this if you want. No strings." Derek Voss looked up slowly, scanning Marcus from head to toe. The simple shirt, the rough hands, the total absence of anything announcing wealth or status. The smirk on his face deepened. "And you are?" Derek asked smoothly. "Marcus," he said. Nothing more. He pulled out the empty chair beside Vanessa and sat down with the ease of a man settling onto his own front porch. Derek's composure held, barely. "You're a colleague of Richard's?" "I'm with her," Marcus said. He glanced at Vanessa once, briefly, giving her the choice, and then looked back at Derek with complete unhurried calm. The table held its breath, and Vanessa Caldwell, who had been trained since childhood to be precise, strategic, and controlled, made a decision in under 2 seconds. "Yes," she said, clear, steady, final. "He is." The table shifted after that, not with confrontation or raised voices. It shifted the way air shifts when someone opens a window in a closed room, quietly, completely. Derek attempted his brand of conversation twice more. Both times it landed differently. There's a particular cruelty that only works when its target is isolated. And Marcus, and simply by being present, calm, and completely unbothered, had ended the isolation. Vanessa began noticing things about him. When he picked up the wrong fork, he switched without embarrassment. When someone asked his profession, he answered plainly, "Construction management. We finished a 12-story mixed-use project in Midtown last month." No apology, no inflation, just the truth. Offered like it was worth exactly what it was worth. When the conversation turned to real estate, clearly designed to include certain people and exclude others, he listened more than he spoke. But when he did speak, he said something that made a board member lean forward. "The problem in that corridor isn't zoning. It's supply chain delays nobody wants to put in writing. We lost 6 weeks on our last project because of it." The board member, who had said 12 words all evening, looked at Marcus with something approaching real interest. They talked for 4 minutes, just the two of them. Vanessa watched and felt something she hadn't expected tonight. Curiosity. When the dessert plates were cleared and the room began its slow wind down, she found herself reluctant for the evening to end. That was new. She was usually counting the minutes. She'd stopped counting somewhere around the time Marcus had made her laugh, quietly, unexpectedly, with a dry observation about the centerpiece roses. "You're right," he'd said when she mentioned they looked overdone. "They overwatered them. The petals are already separating," he'd noticed, not because it was useful, just because he'd looked. They ended up near the ballroom entrance as the last guests filtered out, watching valets navigate a procession of luxury cars under the amber entrance lights. "I still don't know why you did that," Vanessa said. "You looked like someone who needed a person to show up," he said. "You didn't know me." "No, but I recognized the look." She turned to face him. "What look?" He was quiet for a moment. "The one where you've been holding your breath." So long you've forgotten what it feels like to exhale. The valet pulled her car around. Black, quiet engine. Her driver already had the door open. She should get in. She had a 7 a.m. board call. A father expecting a full debrief over Sunday brunch. A life that ran like a finely calibrated machine. Never late. Never messy, never surprising. She didn't move. "I'm Vanessa," she said. "I know, I heard your name about 15 times tonight. And you're Marcus. Just Marcus. Do you drink coffee, just Marcus?" He looked at her for a long moment, not calculating her wealth, or her last name, or the car idling behind her. Something more honest than that. "Only the kind without a 12-syllable name," he said. She laughed. Real laughter, sudden, unguarded, the kind that surprises you with its own arrival. She hadn't done that in this ballroom, or any room like it, in longer than she could remember. "There's a diner on West 44th, she said. "Open all night. The coffee is terrible, and the mugs have chips in them." "Sounds right," he said. She looked at her driver. "I'll walk." "Miss Caldwell." "I'll walk," she said again, quietly, firmly. The diner was exactly as described. Fluorescent lights, formica counters, a cook in the back communicating his entire mood through the sounds he made with pans. The coffee arrived in thick ceramic mugs, and Vanessa's had a chip on the handle that she ran her thumb over while they talked. They talked for 2 hours. Not about foundations or board meetings or development corridors. They talked about Lily's habit of reading under the covers with a flashlight. "She's done it since she was 5. I pretend not to know." And about the construction project that almost broke. Marcus 2 years ago and the one that saved him afterward. About what it feels like to raise a child completely alone. The weight of it, the unexpected grace of it. About what it feels like to be surrounded by people every single day and still be, somehow, profoundly alone. Outside, Manhattan moved through its nighttime rhythms. Inside, over terrible coffee, 2 people from completely different worlds discovered the same thing. The most exhausting thing in life is performing a version of yourself that was built for someone else's comfort. He walked her to her building at midnight. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment. The city quiet around them the way it gets in the small hours. Not silent. Just settled. "Thank you," she said, "for showing up." "Thank you for letting me stay," he said. She looked at him the way you look at someone when you're trying to hold the image of them clearly for later. "Same time next week?" she said. "The diner. I can't promise the coffee gets better." "I'm not asking for better coffee." He nodded once. "Then yeah." She smiled, the real one. Small and uncertain and completely genuine, and turned toward her building. He watched until the door closed behind her. Then he walked back to his truck. Hands in his pockets, city humming around him. Thinking about the particular way the evening had turned out. Nothing like he'd planned and exactly like it should have. Sometimes the most important door in a room isn't the one that leads to power. Sometimes it's the one someone holds open. For you when they have absolutely nothing to gain. And sometimes, if you're paying attention, that's the door worth walking through.